Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a controversial mouse from Razer, the Razer Viper V2 Pro. The reason it's controversial is this mouse costs $150 at the time of making this video, which is quite expensive, and yet it shed a number of different features that appeared on the Razer Viper Ultimate that made that mouse appealing and worth the money. And they've done that in order to shed weight to make it as lightweight as possible. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about my experiences with the mouse, show you what's included in the box, talk about what they've taken away from it, but also I'm going to do a comparison in the near future of this versus the Viper Ultimate. So if you want to see what's been changed in a side-by-side comparison, then stick around and subscribe for that. But in this video, I'm going to talk to you about why I actually like this mouse, and perhaps I'm one of the naysayers against the complaints. However, it is obviously very expensive, but it does have a number of interesting highlights to it. Now, as I said already, they have reduced the weight, so they've shed a number of things from the original Viper Ultimate in order to create the V2 Pro, and that includes removing the right-hand buttons, ditching the RGB lighting and side grips, and making some structural modifications to make it 16 grams lighter. And so now it weighs the same amount as a tennis ball, and that's why there's a tennis ball in the box, in case you're wondering. But it does have a number of interesting upgrades in the specs as well. So from this box, you'll see that it comes with an upgraded sensor, so it now has a maximum of 30,000 dpi. It also has increased in terms of max speed up to 750 IPS and 70 Gs max acceleration as well, which is the fastest specs I've seen and the highest. Now, a 30k DPI is insane, and you probably wouldn't use that, but increased DPI levels often mean improved accuracy as well from the sensor, and this is Razer's Focus Pro 30k optical sensor, and they say it has a 99.8% accuracy, so it's really fast and accurate as well. And it has a number of intelligent AI functions, including smart tracking, enhanced asymmetrical cutoff, and motion sync, and things like that. Now, that might sound like a load of mumbo jumbo, however, it does result in a very smooth and satisfying experience. And I'll talk more about the experience as we go on. But here you can see the mouse itself. Now, this is obviously the white version, a very understated mouse. And as I said, they've dropped the RGB lighting, they've made some changes to it, so when you see the close-up shots in a second, you'll notice the grip differences and things like that, and also a number of other things. But you do still get the usual things that you'd expect to see in the box. For example, you still have that necessary 2.4 gigahertz dongle, you have a USB-C charging cable, so it uses USB-C, which will please many people, and it's a floppy cable as well, and it still manages some really good battery life as well. During my experience and testing, I found it has a decent battery life and seems to be very nice. One thing of note that's interesting is that the white version actually weighs more than the black one, so they claim that without the cable and things, it weighs 59 grams versus the 58 grams of the black, so that's interesting. Now, they've shed weight by changing the grips, so inside the box you'll now find there's some grip tape which you can choose to add, obviously at the danger of adding extra weight to it. I am not going to add on the grip tape for this testing purposes because I want to talk about what it's like to use without it. Obviously you have tape for both the main buttons and for either side of the mouse, and so that would add extra weight into it but make it easier to hold. However, it does have, as you'll see from some of the shots, quite a matte finish on it, and I have found that it is very comfortable to use and doesn't slip around. On the underside you'll find there are a number of slick PTFE feet, and these skates are nice, but one thing you will notice is there's no charging pins, so that's one of the differences. I'm not going to go into too much depth on the differences between this and the Viper Ultimate in this video because I want to save it for the other one, but there's no way of charging it from a little charging dock on this mouse. This is exclusively plugged in and charged via the USB-C cable, which you can see here. That USB-C cable can be used while you're charging it, so you can plug it into your PC, have the USB cable plugged in, and also the dongle, and charge and use the mouse at the same time, and then obviously unplug it when you need to, and use it wirelessly, which is the preference, and it is better, and it is easy to plug in as well. Believe it or not, I have seen mice in the past where the USB-C would only plug in one direction, so I always check that now whenever I unbox and review a mouse, and this one works well. You also obviously get the little adapter, which has a rubberized bottom on it, so you can basically plug your USB dongle into it, plug the cable into that, and have it close to the mouse for a stronger signal if you need it, but also for ease of access. So if you need to plug it into charge on the fly very quickly, you can do that. So you can just pull it out of the mouse, then plug it back in to the dongle, and vice versa with ease, so you can easily adapt when you need to. And that is one of the highlights. Obviously, with no RGB lighting, not only does it shed weight, but it also lasts longer in theory. This is obviously going to depend on your use. I have, however, found that it has lasted quite a long time before I need to plug it in, which is refreshing and pleasant. And here you can see a measure of the weight. Now, as I said, they've included a tennis ball in the box because it's meant to weigh the same as a tennis ball. So 59 grams is the weight of the tennis ball, and the mouse weighs 60, or at least it does at that angle. I have noticed there's a slight little difference when you put it on in different positions. It does go somewhere between 59 and 60. Now, as I said, on the box, they say that this weighs 59 and the black one weighs 58. So 1 gram difference for some reason with the white one, not quite sure why. The finish on it is matte, as I said already, so you can see a close-up look of it of matte. Now, I have heard some other complaints from other reviewers that the body and the shell felt a bit flimsy and made a bit of noise. I haven't experienced that myself. It actually seems quite solid. I did give it a good squeeze and such, and there was no problems with any noises or rattles, so it seems fine in that department. I'm also going to leave a click test at the end of the video so you can check it out and hear the sound. Now, you'll notice on the underside there's a power button to turn it on and off, but also that switches DPI levels as well. And one of the things that I do like about this, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in the Versus video, as well as the side buttons are now sticking out a little bit further. So on the right hand side, they've shed the side buttons from the Viper Ultimate, but you still have them on the left. So this is now obviously a right-handed gamer mouse. This is not a symmetrical design, so it won't be any good for lefties, which obviously left-handed gamers will be disappointed with. But for me, personally, as a right-handed gamer, I found it a lot better to use, a lot more comfortable. These buttons stick out further than they did in the Viper Ultimate, which makes it more comfortable and easy to access. Much easier to press the buttons, much easier to find them. This has Razer's Optical Mouse switches Gen 3, which is designed to last up to 90 million clicks and claimed to have 0 double clicking issues and no debounce delay as well, and I certainly have found them very satisfying. I noticed no sort of discrepancy or issues between the buttons and any problems. There's no pre-travel in them when you click them either. The wireless signal is obviously also fantastic. The 2.4 gigahertz wireless from Razer's Hyperspeed Wireless is more than good enough for a stable signal and connection. And as I said already, you have the possibility of putting the dongle closer to your mouse should you need it if your PC is a little bit further away. Now, I want to talk about the size and shape of the mouse. I've found it's a good size. It's the same as other Razer mice, medium-ish hand size. Now, I use a palm grip, so I found that it's not quite as long as I'd like. However, it is still comfortable. Now, I've already mentioned the matte finish and the fact that it's easy to hold on to. My hands do get hot when gaming, but I have found there isn't a problem with gripping onto it thanks to that matte edging. You can also see just how easy it is for my thumb to reach those side buttons, and I certainly do like how much more they jut out than they did on other Viper mice, so it's a lot easier to game with. I've also generally found it really satisfying in a number of different ways. Good response, it's nice and light, it's really easy to move around the desk. Those optical switches are also very responsive and satisfying. They give a good click response from them, but also obviously accurate when gaming. I've not had any issues there. And the side buttons are also nice. There's no unnecessarily obnoxious noises out of the mouse wheel. It is quite tactile, gives a good bit of feedback, but it's certainly not obnoxiously noisy or graty on your fingers when using it. You can't adjust it like you can with something like the Basilisk Ultimate though, and that is probably one of my favourite mice. If you're looking at a good Razer mouse, then that's a good option to look at and consider. There is no left and right click in the mouse wheel though, so obviously you're quite limited in the number of buttons that you have on this mouse. So if you look at it just on the face of what it is, you've got a lightweight gaming mouse with only a handful of buttons. So there's not a mass of buttons here. You don't have the extra buttons that you get on the Basilisk Ultimate or the Viper Ultimate, for example. Certainly not got as many as the Aerox 5 that I looked at recently, and you're basically limited in a number of different ways, but you do have a mouse which has a good feel to it. It's got a good solid feel, good response, obviously decent battery life. High DPI optical sensor means that it's accurate and also adjustable in a number of different ways. I found it really responsive. You can see from these clips playing Rainbow Six. It's only on training grounds, but it works really well. I have certainly found it a pleasure to game on, is one of the things. Do I think it's worth $150 or about the same in pounds sterling? Possibly not. It really depends if you're a Razer fan, although obviously there's no chroma, so if you're into Razer chroma RGB, that is missing here, but that does mean that you've reduced the weight, and it certainly does feel lightweight. One of the things that I will say though is Razer's done a good job here, in my personal opinion, of making it feel light but also not feel cheap. Some of the lightweight mice I've tried in the past, they've shed so much weight that the body feels a bit cheap and it feels a bit flimsy in the hand, and it can feel a little bit disappointing. I don't feel that way with the Viper V2 Pro. Also, it's nice looking, and you can see from these multiple shots of different angles, the overall finish on it is very nice. It has a good overall sort of slick design to it, but it also isn't smooth. The Razer logo is the only thing really that stands out, and that black and white mouse wheel. Now, one of the things I have noticed when I stacked it up alongside the Logitech G Pro X Superlight is that is remarkably similar. It seems like Razer's once again copied Logitech in terms of its mouse design, and that's interesting, so I'm going to be doing a video to compare those two as well. So this is perhaps a valid alternative to the Superlight if you found the Superlight interesting, were put off perhaps by things like the micro USB charging instead of USB-C, or you're a big Razer fan and you just like the idea of the optical switches and the other setup. That is definitely one complaint of Logitech mice that people have, is those switches let it down because they use Omron switches traditionally. And so this mouse packs a lot underneath in terms of the specs it offers. Also, as I said already, max 750 IPS and 70 Gs acceleration. They're not messing around with the specs on this mouse. So I think although on the surface of it things are missing from the features, actually the specs packed inside it possibly make it worth money, and that's what you're paying for. However, obviously, whether it's worth 150 or not is a very subjective thing, and whether I would pay 150 or not, I question that. So this has been my review of the Viper V2 Pro and my thoughts on it. Come back soon to check out the Logitech Versus and also a comparison with the Viper Ultimate and see what I thought there, and stick around to hear the sounds of the mouse buttons and the wheel if you want to hear that. I'll leave a clip without me talking at the end. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks very much for watching.